Hello, everybody, and welcome again to Nerd to the Third Power, your one-stop shop for all things nerdy and awesome. I am your host and master of ceremonies, Dr. Gonzo. With me, as always, this epic quest of awesomeness is our anime goddess, the Cat. Cat, how are you doing?
How you doing?
I'm doing fine. I'm asking you.
I know. How you doing? I talked like that to a guy at work. It's real funny. It's just the weird, like, the weird.
Is he in the mob?
No. I just sound like that because I just do say to people, "How you doing?" And I just have that little bit of the accent on the doing, and then they're like, "Are you from New York?" I'm like, "No, I'm from this area of Maryland that had like this quasi New Jersey, quasi Southern, quasi Midwestern accent."
Okay. All right. Mike, how are you doing?
I am exceptional, as always. Doing good, staying busy. More busy than I thought I would be. But hey, that's the life of the Birdman. Don't stop until you drop. And even then, they'll find a way to bring you back.
All right. Well, yeah. So we hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. As we record this, it's actually 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, but we're doing this at that time. But as you're listening to this, it should be Black Friday. So we hope that you enjoyed stuffing yourselves with some delicious kidney. Let's try that again. We hope that you enjoyed stuffing yourself with delicious turkey and pie, and that your battles on Black Friday are bring you much honor and early Christmas shopping discounts. So yeah, but we're winding down, coming close to the end of the year here. I think we've only got one more recording after this episode. So yeah, we're getting close to our holiday break. So in our continued quest to kind of wind things down and kind of just take it easy for the last couple shows. Last week we talked about our favorite cartoons. This week we're talking about our favorite movies and why. So yeah, that should be a lot of fun. So, but of course there is procedure to follow. So we're gonna begin as always with Ask a Geek, and we got some questions here. Let's see here now. First question here comes from Neil, and it is for me, and it is: what is the most irritating thing about collecting video games? Let me tell you, the most irritating thing about collecting video games, it's not the prices, it's not trying to find stuff, it's trying to find space for everything. Like, the struggle is real when it comes to shelving, you guys. I have a little over 1,100 items in my collection right now, and I live in this teeny tiny little apartment, and it is just hell on wheels to try and find space for everything. I have probably learned more about mounting wall-mounted shelves in the last year than I have ever, done any kind of shop-related stuff in my life. But like, it is just, finding space for everything. That's the most irritating part about game collecting for me, because I'll get a game or a collector's box, and I'll look for a place to put it and be like, I need to go to IKEA and buy another bookshelf, but where the fuck would I put it?
See, that's the main reason I got out of collecting physical. I don't have the space for it, and it just became so impossible logistically to keep track of everything. And I know you've got apps that kind of do that too. That's another thing I got into it, where I'd accidentally buy the same game twice. Happened more often than I'd like to admit, but at least they weren't expensive games. But
I've done that. I've done that accidentally 3 times, and it was the same game each time. It was Little Nemo Dream Master on the NES.
Oh wow, good game though.
Yeah, and then now I have deliberately bought duplicates of games before. Usually it was one to open or one to keep, or maybe it was like a different version of a game that came with some special stuff that you could only get in that version. Like I have. For Atelier Ryza 2, I have 2 copies of the collector's edition, one American and one Japanese, and that's because the Japanese version came with DLC that you couldn't get in America. So I got the Japanese I got the cheaper version because I wanted both of the pre-order bonus DLC. So, but yeah, no, like the struggle with shelving is real, like. And I'm sure manga collector Cat can feel my pain on that, because you've had to downsize your collection recently because you were running out of space, didn't you?
It was less that I was running out of space, and more that I was moving, and I just could not bear the idea of taking more stuff with me than I needed. Because I was going to end up with a smaller room. So the bedroom that I have now has no bookshelves in it, and I'm going to set up bookshelves somewhere else in the abode. But it was just like, okay, I had to be just painfully realistic about like, when's the last time I read this? Do I think I'm going to read this again anytime soon? But what you got to understand from the collector perspective is, when I was in Japan, which was many years ago now, I bought over 150 volumes of manga.
Holy shit.
Because I lived near a place called Book Off, which is a used bookstore, and you could buy like 20 manga for like $12. So it literally cost me more to ship it home on a slow boat from China than what I paid for the manga. I probably spent like maybe $100 on the manga. So yeah, I did a bad thing. I did a very bad thing and bought that much manga. And then, have slowly accumulated more and more and more until it was like, okay, I have to be realistic. Because I'm a collector and I like a lot of things, but I also need things that are not manga, like clothing. And place to put a third cat tree for my stupid spoiled goblin cat. So like I've had to base a lot of my things in my bedroom based around like how many bookshelves I have, and now I'm sort of on I'm gonna need some like hanging shelves rather than bookshelves now, because there's a lot more stuff I need to put in my bedroom that I do not have room for. So but I downsized a lot of my manga because it was just too much. And I got rid of a lot of books as well. Thankfully, I have a niece, and I was able to just be like, here you go. Here's some things that I loved that I don't want to just throw away or give to some stranger. Here, you take these books that I loved.
Yeah. So yeah, shelving. The struggle is real. But yeah, I've been putting up a lot of wall mounted shelves in my game room and in my bedroom to hold some of my stuff. Actually, kind of a funny story. We were trying to mount a shelf in the game room on the last bit of bare wall, and we got one shelf mounted up, and we couldn't get the one underneath it because as we were drilling the hole, we kept hitting like some kind of steel plate. And my brother, who's the one who owns the tools, is like, "Well, I got a drill bit that'll pierce through steel. We can just drill right through it." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, let's go ahead and do that." So he went to go retrieve it. And on his way back, he just happened to look into our kitchen, which is on the other side of the game room wall,
no.
and saw that what we were hitting was the back of the fucking fuse box.
Oh my god! You guys should not be allowed. Like, you should not be left alone to your own devices.
So he's like, yeah, Gonzo, you might want to come into the kitchen. Why? Yeah, you can see what we've been hitting. We were hitting the fuse box. I was like, oh, yeah, maybe nix the drill piercing, the steel piercing drill bit then. Yeah, so.
Oh, no.
I was like, I really don't want to have to tell my mother that my brother got launched across the room trying to put up a shelf to hold games and anime figures.
Yeah, explain that one to the EMTs when they show up.
Yeah. So so those shelves are in my bedroom now. But yeah, shelving. It's if it's not trying to find places to put shelves, it's trying to play this never-ending Tetris game to get everything to fit on the shelves you already have.
And the thing you want to play is at the bottom, and you have to figure out how to get it out from underneath everything.
Yeah, really, the worst of it is this bookshelf that I have all my special editions on, because that is like filled to burst, and I've got everything arranged like just so, where everything's there, and you can actually see everything. Everything's nice and displayed, but like I've got to fucking rejigger everything every single time a new collector's box comes in, and I've got like 6 of those coming in from limited run in the next couple of months. So yeah, that's gonna be fun. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Next question here. Okay. Alrighty. Okay, here's one for you, Kat. This one comes from Percy. And they ask, what is an out-of-print manga that you would like to see get a second run?
Oh my god. Let me think here. There was some Korean comics, manhwa, that came out in the early 2000s that I adored. that either got dropped from publication either in Korea or America, but at the time you could not find this information out. And there was one that I really loved. I was reading it back in like 2002. That's how long ago this was, you guys. Back when I had my first part-time job working at a Walden Books. And there was this manhwa called Ragnarok. And it's like tangentially related to that old MMORPG that existed online. The character designer for that was the manhwaga, I think is the right term, the artist. And he wrote this really cool story, and it was extremely loosely based on Norse mythology. And it was a really cool world and really interesting characters and really interesting character developments. And then it just stopped. And I don't know if it ever repicked back up, but I think I still have that somewhere in a box. But I would love if that would get like a re-release over here in some sort of like collector's edition, because mine are pretty beaten up from rereading a million times. I'm trying to think of anything else I'd love to see another run of. Shit. A lot of the stuff that I really like actually got re-released, because my first thought would have been Magic Knight Rayearth, but that got another release and maybe got a third release. I'm not sure.
I got an answer for this.
Go
question.
for it.
Trigun Maximum, because I'm 3 volumes away from a complete set, and I want to know how this story ends, but that fucker's been out of print for like 10 years.
Oh my god, really? Like in the US,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
Because I'd assume that it's all out in Japan. I would think, and I thought it was still going on to some capacity. But I would
No, it ended. The story ended like 10 years ago, because I remember flipping through the last volume in Borders back when that was a thing.
No, I'm pretty sure
years
there's a series after Trigun Maximum, though.
Is there?
I think there is. I was looking up Trigun recently because one of my roommates has never seen the Badlands Rumble movie that came out, and then I had the horrifying realization of how long ago that movie came out. And so I was looking up like, hey, did Wolf survive in the manga? Because for a long time he did.
He did not.
He made it a lot longer in the manga than he did in the anime, because the manga's a lot longer. But what I would love for Trigun are one of the big mega tankoban, which like
door stoppers.
Yeah, I want one of those, because quite frankly, like again, space is an issue, and those fuckers are really big. But I like the density of them. I like having all that shit in one place. I bought all the re-releases of like every Clamp manga that they did in a tankobon like that. I bought because they cleaned up a lot of the like the errors, like the translation errors, because it was basically like they were re-releasing it more accurately. So like Magic Knight Rayearth, Tokyo Babylon, RG Veda ? Yeah, all those manga that came out a long time ago that were like flipped and all that stuff. They Dark Horse picked them up and re-released them in the big size tankobon, and I just really like them. They did it with Cardcaptor Sakura, actually. I really like those releases. I think they look nice. They don't. They're just nice. I really like them, and I'd love it if they did that with Trigun, just to get it all in one place. It literally takes up less room on the shelf, even though it's taller. So just make it happen, somebody.
Okay. Alrighty, and let's see.
No, wait, now. I thought of one. There was a series called Dragon Knight. I don't think they finished it. I don't think they finished releasing it in the US. I think its license lapsed or something. It was a really weird, interesting series, and I collected the whole thing in Japanese. And I think I ended up giving it to one of my friends I might still have it, but I don't think I do. And it was really cool, but it was really strange. And the translations were a little bit, I don't want to say questionable, but like the names were very weird and romanizing them was very difficult. And that is a series. It was called Dragon Knight. And it was very good, and I really enjoyed it. And I loved those characters, and boy, did it not pull any punches in killing characters. And I desperately want a re-release of that series. And if they could do that in a giant tankobon, that would be great. Thank you for asking.
Okay. All right. Next question is for me, but I'm going to open it up to Mike as well because it's kind of up your wheelhouse. This question here comes from Rick, and he asks, do I watch any gaming YouTubers? Me, I watch very few. Mostly because of issues that I discussed in a previous Ask Geek question about things that irritate me about gaming YouTubers. I tend to focus on ones that the ones that I follow tend to focus more on game collecting than news or reviews. So, Metal Jesus Rocks is a big one that I follow.
I like him.
Lithium and his channel, Nintendo Collecting is another one that I watch. That guy has a game room that like I would murder to have. Like you look at his game room and it is just like it's basically a Nintendo mecca. It really is. He has got so much awesome stuff, and he's got like his ceiling decked out to look like the bricks from Super Mario Brothers with like the question blocks. Like it's fucking insane the amount of work he's put into that room. I can only wish to have a game room that's a quarter that awesome. Games of War is another one that I follow. The closest that I come to watching, the only channels I really watch to focus on new stuff is I watch Wolf Den, more for his videos about like hardware and accessories. And I watch Woodhawker, his channel Beat 'em Ups, every now and then. Catch some of his videos. I also love a channel called Arlo, who with him it's the presentation because I'll just come out and say it. Arlo's a Muppet, a literal like Muppet presenting video game reviews and talking about Nintendo, and it's such a creative, wholesome little channel that I love it so much. But a lot of the big gaming YouTubers like RGT85 or Normal Boots I don't really follow. RGT85 basically, it's nothing against the guy himself, but like just something about his voice just kind of irritates me. I don't know. Stop Skeletons from Fighting I'll watch every now and then when they do something interesting. I like their stuff because they tend to focus more on like historical stuff or like really kind of oddball stuff that I didn't know about. Like they just did an entire like 2-part video series on like the apparently hundreds of different mobile ports of Resident Evil 4. Which I'm pretty sure now has the record for the most remade game ever. So, but yeah, those are the major gaming YouTubers that I follow. Mike, what about you?
I follow a bunch of different ones, so I'll kind of go through the laundry list. I watch a couple of people that started out on YouTube, and now they do a lot of Twitch stuff. They also do YouTube stuff as well. The first one is a guy named Justin Kostef Chandler. He's the former owner of Team Caliber, which was a Call of Duty kind of pro league. He does COD trolling videos, and he's kind of what got me back into COD back in 2014 when he was doing advanced kind of warfare, and that's why I'm the asshole who runs around in every gun game and punches you so you go back a level. I'm that guy. Another one is a person I started watching because she lived in the TK house, which is sponsored by G Fuel. Her name is Fuya, and I've just become a friend over the years. Like in actual real life, I talk with other members of her family, and it's kind of fun. We do like a Christmas exchange every year. Another one that I watch because I've been with these guys since the beginning is the Game Chasers, and I've known Billy and Jay since the show started. I remember when they were compared to the Retro Hunters on Screw Attack, and I know Rob from the Retro Hunters is back online now. Another for game reviews, I don't watch any of the really big guys just because, but there's a guy that I like, and I can't remember what his channel is, but it always pops up in my home thing. and his name is Jeremy. I know that for sure. And his reviews are always buy, wait, or don't touch, or replaced by deep discount if it's on Steam. And his reviews are really in depth and technically very good. He's also kind of funny too. I really respect his opinion. Another person that I follow are another COD YouTuber named Drifter, and he does all the gun guides every year and breaks down all the stats. And he also does interesting thought experiments and thought videos, and I like his perspective on most things. Another guy is a more technical COD YouTuber named Exclusive Ace. He does great technical breakdowns on how all the guns work and all the mechanics for like kind of class setups and everything. I'm trying to think. The gaming historian, Norm, wonderful guy, one of the most genuine people I've ever met in my life. Plus his videos are top-notch research. Like, you don't get much better than Norm. Another person that I really like, they used to be part of Machinima, but now it's just him, really. I think his name is Bruce Green. I think the channel's just called Inside Gaming, and he always does a video every Saturday where it's just like, here's 5 minutes of news, here's a 5-second game review, where he's like, yeah, it's good, it's fun. And then he just moves on to what's coming out the next week. He's great for keeping track of stuff. Metal Jesus Rocks, I love that guy's attitude. I really do.
Can I tell you, there's a funny story about how I discovered Metal Jesus. So the first time I saw one of his videos, I remember very specifically, it was one he was talking about this like N64 HDMI add-on. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the thumbnail for that video, he's got like this scowl on his face. Me not knowing anything about this guy when I see him, I look at him and I'm just like, man, this guy looks like he fell out of a Rob Zombie cover. So like I started the video expecting like this kind of like angry, kind of like gruff voice, and the guy starts talking. It's like, oh no, he's a teddy bear.
Yeah, like I really like his kind of humor. And then one person, I like listening to their takes on the podcast, but he does this one piece of content so infrequently, but I really enjoy it. It's Pat the NES Punk. I love flea market madness, mostly when he finds toys. I'm always really interested in that. And sometimes he'll hit on a really good podcast topic that I like. I like him more as a podcaster than I did his like kind of scripted humor. And yeah, I'd say those are most of the major people. There's another guy that I follow. Just this will be the last one that I mentioned. He's a Dragon Ball Z YouTuber who focuses on the game Xenoverse 2. His name is Burkhole, and people challenge him and say they're going to get him banned. They're going to hack his account, and he'll record the entire match. Usually it goes 15 rounds, and he's like, and the only thing he'll ever send back is 1-0L. 1-0, and then it would just so on and so forth, and the other person will just talk trash, and he'll just keep responding until the wins rack up and they rage quit. And I've learned some interesting techniques in that game, not to be cheap, but how to be a better player. So it's been a really cool experience to actually look at more gaming YouTube channels to learn technique and theory. So yeah, those are the people that I plus Call of Duty League. I love that too.
Oh, and one more that I forgot to mention, who I follow because he's actually a friend of mine from the CA days, from the dark time, Guru Larry.
Yeah, I like Larry. Good guy.
All right, let's see here now. So do we have time for one more? Let's see. Let's see if there's an easy one here. Okay, this one's not a short one by any stretch, because I know that it's going to go real in depth, but it's one that's so cool that I can't pass it up. This one's for Kat, but I'm going to open it up to all of us. And this question is: if you could design a set of dice based around your favorite property, what would it be? So, Kat, let's start with you. If you could design your own dice based around your favorite movie, TV show, manga, whatever, what would it be? How would you what would it be, and how would you design your dice?
Oh man, that's a hard question. And okay. So first off, much like we talked about in a previous episode about artisanal dice and making dice out of bones and stuff, and how I have a dice made with shark teeth, I'm gonna need some dinosaur teeth. Or some dinosaur bone. Because one of my favorite things of all time is Jurassic Park. And how can I make that into dice without literally 65 million years in the making, getting some sort of fossils? Actually, a really easy way to do it, to make JP-themed dice would be to do tiny mosquitoes in amber.
Yeah, that'd be fucking awesome.
You could, like, because a lot of people do these little, they use a 3D printer to get tiny little inserts into their dice. So tiny little mosquitoes. 3D print some little mosquitoes and then put them inside some, like, amber colored resin. Make it sparkle, make it shine, and then you have these dice. I'm pretty sure these exist already. Somebody has to have made these already. But that would be like a really kick-ass, sort of subtle way to make some really cool themed dice.
They have to be named Spared No Expense.
Spared no expense. Every time you roll like a 20 or something, you get that natural 20, you're like, oh, spared no expense.
And the 20 is just the T-Rex logo.
Yes. Oh my God. That would be so good. Perfect.
Okay. All right. Birdman, what about you?
This one's going to be a little bit more difficult to source than dinosaur bone, if you can believe it. I would like to use moon rock or meteorite, so maybe like iridium or something, and I would like to make dice for Mass Effect. And whatever is etched in them would be low-level radioactive. Just radioactive enough, like how on certain gun sights, there's that little thing that makes it kind of glow, which I can't remember what the proper term is, but just enough to give it a glow, if that's possible, with being safe, or just enough where if you ran a Geiger counter over it, it might spike for a second. Just to give it that otherworldly, biotic feel, right? Like this has come from the mass relays or something like that. I think that would be fantastic. And you could only roll these dice if the galaxy map music from Mass Effect 1 is currently playing. Like, it would just be so astounding. Alternatively, something with the Fallout D20 game would be really cool. I just don't know what you could do outside of maybe making a Nuka-Cola themed set, maybe for the different types, like quantum, cherry, orange, root beer, etc. Maybe those are the different dice types, with quantum being an actual glowing D20, like those liquid crystal dyes I've seen them do.
Those are cool.
Yeah, so maybe something like that could be really cool, because Fallout's more possible than harvesting meteorites right now. So
and you want radioactive dice. Yeah. If you ever get those, you're not allowed to bring them if we ever meet and play in person. I've already had one type of cancer. I don't need you giving me another with your nuclear dice.
Yeah, no space cancer for you.
Yeah. But
Space cancer, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Not sure how to feel about that, because on the one hand it's funny, but on the other, you're making fun of me for having cancer.
Hey, maybe you'll get superpowers like the Fantastic Four. Who knows?
Okay, and now you're going too far. Scale it back. I love you, man. Okay. All right. Well, for me, I think my if I could design dice off anything, it would be off of The Legend of Zelda. I would love to have a set of dice modeled maybe after the different colors of rupees, or maybe like the 20 on the D20 is just the Master Sword. One thing, if you're going to do a Zelda themed dice, the D4, which is the little pyramid one, each side has to have the Triforce carved into it. Like, each side of the D4 has to be carved to look like the Triforce. Like, that just has to happen. You cannot do a set of Zelda dice and not have the Triforce be represented in some way.
I'm gonna send you a link.
Okay.
I'm literally gonna send you a link to some Zelda themed dice, but it was also a pun.
Okay. Are you gonna send it like now or after recording?
I'm trying. My phone is not so fast, but yeah, I'm. But one moment.
Now I do have an actual gold-plated D20 Zelda D20 that's hollow. And I use that a few times when I want to make really important rolls in our Fools Who Ride show. But I think having another one, a D4 that's carved to look like the Triforce, would be awesome. So, oh, you sent it through Facebook. Okay.
Yeah, it was easier.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, these are nice.
Those are so pretty.
Yeah, those are. D4 does not look like the Triforce, though.
Well, it was literally the first thing I could find.
I know. I'm just razzing. But anyway, that's all the ASCII questions that we have for this week. Thank you as always for sending them in. We love getting your questions, love reading them on the air. So go ahead and get your questions in. You just might get yours read on the show. All right, and last week we talked about our favorite cartoons, and this week, as we kind of wind things down, as kind of take it easy after the Thanksgiving holiday, we thought we'd talk about another easy topic: our favorite movies and why we love them. So yeah, so let's just jump right into it. So we started with Kat last time, so Mike, let's start with you this time. What's your favorite movie ever and why?
I'm gonna go with my favorite movie ever because everyone's like, oh, he's gonna talk about fucking aliens again or RoboCop. No, I'm actually going to talk about something that sparked an interest heavily in science and history, and that movie is Apollo 13 by Ron Howard. This movie came out in 1995. I must have seen it in theaters easily 10 times during its run, and it never got boring. I actually watched it just before the show today, and it still gets me to this very day. So for those of you that don't know, Apollo 13 was an American space program mission in the 1970s with the goal of landing on the moon, obviously, and that was supposed to happen. However, due to a manufacturing defect inside one of the oxygen tanks, when they performed a cryo stir of the oxygen, there was a spark, big boom in the command module, and it was a disaster in space where they were leaking oxygen, they were losing power. They could have died in space, and they wouldn't be the first people to die in space either. So, but it would be the first Americans in space, outside the ones who died on the kind of launching pad in the capsule. But it's a story of how these three astronauts, Jim Lovell, Fred Hayes, and Jack Swigert, were able to come together over the course of several days to get back to Earth. But they've got to think quick, they've got to work together, and they have to prove they are the top of their fields in order to come back. And even one of the flight controllers, Gene, I can't remember his last name, who was there up until like the 90s or something, had said, this is going to be our finest hour. And with all the different engineering teams working together, they were able to come back. And Ron Howard, when this movie had been optioned around Hollywood under, I think it was called Lost Moon or something like that, there were people attached to the project or asked to. Kevin Costner's name was tossed around. There was John Travolta got asked. Brad Pitt was offered at one point for a role. And eventually Tom Hanks said, this is really good. And the movie is just so technically well shot, where each of those spacesuits that you see on screen is $30,000 minimum for a prop, for a costume. But you're also looking at how they designed the limb, the command module. That's almost exact NASA specifications for some of that. They even went up in the famous Vomit Comet spaceship thing that they use to kind of train, where they take the astronauts up to a really high altitude, then drop really fast, and then you're weightless for so long. So those scenes are technically real. And it was just such an interesting view of the space program. It took it so seriously. I've been a big lover of astronomy my entire life. I grew up on the Discovery Channel. I read many books about space. Even as a child, I understood a lot of things. And Apollo 13 made me pay more attention to the space program, because the Hubble Space Telescope, I think, was launched in the early 90s to mid 90s. When the Galileo probe got to Jupiter in the 90s, I remember that being a big deal. That's what got me interested in going back and seeking out old issues of National Geographic, specifically when Voyagers 1 and 2 passed by Jupiter, Neptune, and Uranus, and we saw these planets for the first time in full actual color. That's what your eye would see. And it was something so beautiful and astounding. Plus, the movie gave me another score by the same guy who did Aliens, James Horner, who's unfortunately passed away. And it was just so powerful that it can stir the right emotions in me with it. And it really made me fall in love with Tom Hanks. And the only really big movie I'd seen Tom Hanks in was Forrest Gump, which I think was the year before this. And I didn't see Philadelphia in 1993. I didn't see Big until like last year. So I really hadn't seen a lot of his filmography, but I knew who he was. But I knew who Kevin Bacon was because I love Tremors. I knew who Bill Paxton was because of Aliens and The Terminator and all those movies. And it's something that, like I said, it made me appreciate science. And I had a really revealing thought today, and then I'll pass this off to somebody else. It's funny, we put such a focus on things that entertain us or things that are distracting. Like, you can name more accomplishments from the Kardashians, or you can name more athletes than I bet most people can name astronauts or scientists. And that's a disturbing thought in a lot of ways. When we think of billionaires like Branson and Musk, who are literally throwing Skittles in space, I want that sense of wonder for the space program again. I don't want it to be commercialized to high hell. I want us to be excited. Like, we flew a helicopter on Mars not 6 months ago. That's out of the news now. I want us to be excited about exploring what's out there, because there's something beautiful. There's probably something scary and terrifying out there too. But knowledge should be its own beautiful pursuit. And it's movies like this that inspired that love to keep going, keep asking questions, keep investigating science, to never give up, to never stop learning. And I consider this movie to be one of the cornerstones that kept my interest in science alive and well into my 40s.
Okay, all right. Well, yeah, you kind of put that pretty perfectly. So there's not really anything I can really say to follow that up. So yeah, all right. Kat, you got anything to add to that?
So my pick, which we've already talked about this episode, is sort of the opposite spectrum of science, delving into the more unrealistic science of making dinosaurs out of mosquitoes. So my favorite movie of all time, always has been and always will be, is Jurassic Park. Now, I know you're going to think, oh, Lord of the Rings, Kat, you love Lord of the Rings. But I love Jurassic Park.
See, I'm thinking close to that. I'm thinking, oh, good, she chose Jurassic Park. That means I get to talk about Lord of the Rings.
Yes. You're welcome. You're welcome. No, I have loved Jurassic Park since I was a kid. It's the first movie I can remember seeing in a movie theater. I probably saw movies prior to that, but it's the first one that I actually remember seeing. I remember going to see this film, loving it. My grandmother was visiting, or no, we must have been in the US at the time, probably. We probably were in the US visiting family, went to the movies. My grandmother fell asleep during it. Don't know how. And then I remember us going to like a Target or a Walmart or something afterwards. And my brother and I each got some dinosaur toys, and we ended up collecting Jurassic Park toys for many, many years afterwards. For like 5 or 6 years after that first movie came out. We had a pretty, and probably still do somewhere, have a pretty extensive collection of those old toys. And it's one of those things where, for a very long time in my life, like every other millennial, I thought dinosaurs are really, really cool. And I went out of my way to play this. So when I was a kid, the only computer games we had were informational ones. And we had some sort of computer game that was like a dinosaur encyclopedia. And I would play that all the time until I knew everything about every dinosaur. And I told myself that I want to be a paleontologist when I grew up. And I spent years of my life wanting to be a paleontologist until I realized how much math you had to know and how difficult math was for me, which is what happens when you read numbers backwards. So
Math all ruining everything.
yeah, fucking hell. So I was like, okay, obviously I'm never going to be able to get a science degree with how much math I would fail in the process. So I kind of gave up on that dream. But there's always part of me that's like, I know you can go do shit like this. You can pay money to go be on a dig, or something like that. And that's part of why I ended up collecting other kinds of more easily accessible fossils. And so I had a pretty, and still do have a pretty decent little shark tooth collection of fossilized shark teeth, fossilized like stingray plates that they use. I have a couple of dolphin teeth, anything that you could wash up and I could like dig out of the sand on some remote beaches in Maryland. I did, and I love them, and I love the science behind it all. But Jurassic Park for me was just, so besides shaping up my love of science from a young age, even though I can't do the math to back it up, it was just fascinating. What a concept. Because the very idea is like, capitalism kills. Maybe don't do that. Like, here's a guy, especially more so in the books than the movie, but like a guy who wants to make money off of an extinct species that he has not learned enough about, and hires people that are underpaid, and he gets sabotaged, and then it's a monster. It's a monster flick after that. And I think it straddles that line of being a spooky, scary monster film while also being like a popcorn thriller, just general action film. And I don't think we give enough appreciation for how scary the dinosaurs are. But, you know, when you're freaking 7 or 8 years old sitting in the theater, that dinosaur, that big T-Rex is the scariest fucking thing you've ever seen. And I would have dreams about being chased around by dinosaurs in my house. Those raptors were terrifying, and I loved it. More so than I love any other monster, or certainly any other spooky, scary anything. And it's kind of, everybody talks about this, but it's worth bringing up that the CG that was used in this film was completely revolutionary at the time. And it still generally holds up today.
Oh yeah, this was. I think it's fair to say that Jurassic Park was King Kong for our generation.
It really
100%.
was. If you've go ahead.
I would say it was King Kong for our generation, and to me at least, it's the last film that really exemplifies the concept of movie magic. Because, like, you know, you sit there and I sit there and I watch the original Jurassic Park, and even though I know that it's an animatronic or it's CG, I believe that is a real T-Rex. That is a real Brachiosaurus. Those raptors are real. Whereas now I watch, say, for a supporting comparison, say Jurassic World, and it all feels kind of like mindless spectacle. You know, the dinosaurs don't feel real. They don't feel like they're really there. They don't have any real sense of weight or presence. Whereas in the original film, like there was
life to them.
Yeah, and you watch that film and within that scene where Grant and Ellie are looking up the Brachiosaurus, you feel like that sense of wonder, and you truly feel like you're looking at a real living, breathing creature.
Yeah, there was such a good, seamless balance of practical effects and special effects, to the point where you could watch a scene and not really know if the raptor was CG or an animatronic. And that was like, it was never quite the same after they stopped. It's like you said, after they stopped using the animatronics, it was never as good, because it didn't have that same sort of weight. It didn't have the same presence. No matter how good it looked, it just wasn't quite the same. And like I said, if you don't know anything about the science behind the making of Jurassic Park, they literally were going to use claymation at the time and make the best looking claymation you've ever seen. But they literally had a guy all set up and making some stuff, and they were all set to go on it, and it was literally at that exact moment in time that they were working on CG, and they were like, well, let's try this, and they did it better than most movies do it today. And it's because they didn't do too much. It was so little as to be barely imperceptible.
One of the cool things they did to kind of go on the special effects, I know they invented a new type of 3D rendering technology where they added a skeleton underneath the creature, which is why when it moves, it does look so fluid, because they could base that upon real computer inputs. I think the guy who did this was Phil Tippett, I want to say. I'm not 100% sure on that. But you're right, though. Oh, sorry?
Sorry, go ahead.
I was about to say, when they, I remember this so clearly, because like Kat, I was a huge fan of this too. I remember Entertainment Tonight doing segments on the special effects for this movie. Like, they showed the render farms for these things. And think back to 1993 technology. Think how many of those workstations were needed to render. Like, I think a scene was it took a week and a half to do anything. And it still largely holds up, and I'm so impressed the Jurassic Park franchise even continues today. But the original two, I think, are fantastic, and the books were pretty neat too. Although,
it's also,
go ahead, Gotha.
It's also interesting how the use of CGI in this movie almost didn't happen, because I think it was Kathleen Kennedy, the head of the studio at the time, just didn't have any faith in it. There's a documentary series on Netflix called The Movies That Made Us, and they did an episode on Jurassic Park, and they got the guy who first started doing the CGI effects for the dinosaurs, and he had to actually they did a test screening of some effects with not just a guy, Ray Harryhausen, the guy who did the stop motion for Clash of the Titans. So he's up against a heavy hitter. He literally had to set up a workstation right outside the theater as they were coming out of that test screening with a looped video of a T-Rex skeleton walking around. And Steven Spielberg just happened to look at it as he was walking. I was like, "Hey, what's this? Oh, this is cool. Oh no, let's do this instead." So it's interesting to see how those computer graphics almost didn't happen, and how we take CGI graphics for granted because they're pretty much everywhere nowadays. But back in the early 90s, guys like this guy doing the dinosaur effects, or the guys at Pixar making computer animated films, these were the renegades of their day. These were the underdogs, and it's incredible to think how much different the film would have been had this one guy just not gone, okay, you know what? Fuck this. I'm going to show this to Steven Spielberg with it. Kills me.
Yeah.
I was about to say, it's kind of nutty because you look at CG coming up through the 80s and it was mostly kind of rotoscope or blue screen, whatever. But then you get into the Abyss by James Cameron and then Terminator 2 in 91. And people were blown away by the T-1000. So you think about how quickly technology moved from a guy morphing out of the floor to this living, breathing creature that for a second, like Kat says, fills you with legitimate fear as that roar makes that theater shake. I remember for the first time hearing that and being, oh my God, is this what it sounded like?
I also think that it has this sort of Jaws-ness to it, in that there is a lot of scariness to be found by not showing the dinosaurs. You get the little sneak peeks, and you get the thumping on the water, and you get the build up to the dinosaurs is such a fantastic payoff.
I don't even think we even see a velociraptor until 3/4 of the way into the movie.
Yeah, you see the cow go down and the cow come back up, and you're like, you barely glimpse them in the first scene, and you're made to know that this is a predator, and then you see them later, and you're like, fuck. I think a lot of just so much of this film laid the groundwork for a lot of blockbusters to come afterwards. And I think that one of the greatest film scenes of all time, because it has been parodied over and over and over again, is the scene in the kitchen.
Yes.
I mean, it's just such a phenomenal scene, like, because it's right there it's in the last act, you're building up, and like, these are kids, these are literal children running away from fucking nightmare dinosaurs who have proven that they are way smarter than people. And they're in an impossible situation, and these kids are just clever enough to escape, and your heart is pounding. And it's just such a fantastic scene. I'm there. And I think that is such a testament to just how wonderful this script was and how great those actors are, because kids are annoying as hell in most films. And even these kids in particular are meant to be a little bit annoying, but God, what a fantastic scene. And like, how many movies or TV shows, or how many times has this been redone? How many times has this been parodied? Because they did such a fantastic job.
Okay, all right, and running from that, I would say probably the apotheosis of what Jurassic Park started was crystallized in my pick, which is the Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy. Just the Lord of the Rings, not the Hobbit. Although I will go on record as saying that the first two Hobbit films were good, but the third just kind of, anyway, getting sidetracked. But yeah, Lord of the Rings, my favorite movie of all time. Movies of all time. I'm kind of surprised that I even in the chat, we're in our Facebook chat, we were discussing what we're going to talk about this episode. Kat was like, okay, it's going to be a coin toss between Jurassic Park or Lord of the Rings. So I know that Lord of the Rings is like up there for her as well. But like, we talked about with Jurassic Park that, you still watch it and you believe that you're looking at a real creature. Lord of the Rings, you believe that you're actually being transported to this other world. And it is so incredible, the amount of work and effort and love and world building that went into the making of this film trilogy. Like, there's a reason why the special making of features are like 24 hours long on each movie.
And I've seen them all.
But it's like, it's just astonishing, just the level of work that went into these. And it's amazing to think how many roadblocks there were, or there were so many points where if just one little thing had changed, the whole movie would not have worked. Like, there's a bit where Peter's talking about presenting the film to the film execs at Miramax. No, not Miramax, at New Line. And he's just shooting for, to make 2 movies. And the exec is like, Peter, why would anyone in their right mind make 2 movies out of this story? And Peter's just like, oh God, that's it. This isn't going to work. And the exec says, this is 3 films. This is 1 film per book. And you think, like, there's all these moments like that where this film could have been just shot to hell before it even got off the ground. But like, it's just astonishing like I said, it's like the apotheosis of everything that Jurassic Park started. Like, I look at an orc or a Mumakil or the Balrog, and I believe that it's a real creature. You look around the sets of like Hobbiton or Rivendell or Gondor, I believe that that's a real fucking place. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that these films were shot in New Zealand, which has so many just gorgeous locations that they were able to build around and film within. And it's so amazing to see all of these pieces come together. And just the casting in this film was absolutely perfect. Like, Viggo Mortensen will always be Aragorn to me. Like, I can't even read the books now without imagining, Viggo Mortensen's Aragorn or Elijah Wood's Frodo. It's one of those films that, like, there's so much to talk about. Like, where do you even start?
One of the things that I loved about these movies especially was the detail to the weaponry. And at the time when these movies were coming out, I lived in a town called London, Ontario. One of the people in London, I think, worked on the movie. He was supplying blacksmithing stuff to Weta Workshop, who was supplying most of the stuff for this, which I always thought was tremendously cool, seeing all the different swords. I think Arwen's sword, that the elf woman, her curved blade is one of the most beautiful pieces of weaponry I've ever seen in my life. And you were right, just the spectacle of this, seeing these places, like the Shire, that's a place, man. That's not Middle Earth. That's here and now. You're right. There's not many movies that can inspire that sense of wonder. And I remember. Go on, dude. Please wax poetic.
I want to swing back to you talking about the weapons.
Yes.
Because one of my hobbies is I actually study as a hobby historical warfare, and all of the weapons in this movie were designed for practicality first before appearance. So
good.
All of the weapons that are designed in this movie, like there's actually a book that I got called Lord of the Rings: Weapons and Warfare, and it actually analyzes like how these weapons were based on real historical weapons and how they would actually be used. So, for example, Aragorn's longsword would be used for like chopping and slicing, whereas Boromir's shorter sword was more of a stabbing weapon. And analyzing like all the different combat styles that were utilized in this movie, and like how the elven swords were kind of based on katanas, which were because of the curved blade, they're used more for slicing. And it's just such a fascinating book. If you can track it down, I highly recommend you pick it up. You would just like get such a nerd boner over it.
Yeah, like it's so incredible, the attention to detail they did for this movie. Like the makeup is fantastic. The costuming is like, when I picture Dungeons and Dragons, now fuck that D&D movie from 2000. I think of Lord of the Rings. That is the gold standard for fantasy when it comes to sword and sandal stuff, especially now. And I can't think of many movies that have matched that level of immersion and technical detail. When the D&D movie eventually comes out, you got to compete against Lord of the Rings, and good fucking luck is what I've got to say, because Peter Jackson set the bar so ridiculously high.
And now we need to let Kat gush for a bit, because I'm pretty sure that if we don't, her head is going to explode.
Yeah, so we don't need to like talk about all the same things that we talked about on our special Lord of the Rings episode, but it is worth mentioning that this film changed film. Like, it's interesting how like the movies that we've talked about are sort of revolutionary. So Lord of the Rings changed movies as we know it, because suddenly the film industry was like, okay, we gotta jump on this fantasy train. We've got to do Lion and the Witch and the Wardrobe. We've got to do all these things. And every big movie, no matter if it was fantasy or sci-fi or whatever, had to have that big epic battle scene. It had to have the two armies clashing at one another the way that Lord of the Rings did it.
And it also showed that genre films could be taken seriously, because you look, especially at fantasy films, prior to Lord of the Rings, you had stuff like Legend, or
Conan,
or Conan. It was all stuff that was very cheesy, kind of schlocky. But Lord of the Rings comes along and shows that no, fantasy and genre films, they can be cinematic experiences. They can be great movies.
How many years did Return of the King win? Was it all of them?
Almost all of them. Yeah, it did a massive.
It was like 12 or something. It was an insane number. And for a genre film to win that many Oscars, I don't think anybody's really done it since. Like, you see the Marvel movies get passed over for even nominations, much less awards, time and time again, because they don't want to award a genre film, even though like Marvel movies are now sort of the standard movie because it's everything that's coming out. But Return of the King fucking crushed it.
I actually got a story about the Oscar awards for Return of the King. So I'm pretty sure I mentioned this on the show, but every year me and a group of friends, we do an Oscar betting pool. And for the year that Return of the King was up, I bet on it for everything. And it was actually this year was the reason why every year afterwards we only bet on the top 5 instead of all of them. And I cleaned the fuck up. I was 19 years old and I walked away with almost $1,000 from that betting pool.
Oh my god.
One of the things that's one of my favorite memories for Return of the King, I saw it with my girlfriend at the time, Christy, in this really old 1930s style theater. So think of the red velvet from the ceiling, the really cool curtains that a usher had to come out and open and close. It was a really classy experience. It looked like something out of 1930s New York. And I'm sitting there in a crowd of probably 500 people. And Return of the King plays out, the huge battle where the army of the dead comes to fight near Aragorn's side. Cool. And then guess what happens? I gotta go to the bathroom. And I'm like, I gotta pee. Can't pee. I think I held that for the next 2 hours. When they get back to Rivendell, I'm thinking, oh good, there's 5 minutes left. I was wrong. But I remember Return of the King for being the movie that tested my bladder to the end, but being so happy for these characters. And I can't think of many movies out of the 2000s that really had me cheering for individual people like that. Like, even being sad for kind of Gollum when he went nuts, but cheering for Gandalf the White when he came back. Because I never read the books as a child. I had no idea that Gandalf was going to come back. I mean, that was fucking Magneto, as far as I knew. And, you know, it was magical. There's no other way to put the Lord of the Rings movies as a whole. They're like Jurassic Park. They're transcendent in their time in a weird kind of way. And it's amazing how far filmmaking has come from the silent movies of the 1910s and forward to now. It's kind of amazing.
So on the topic of testing your bladder, it's worth pointing out that I think the Lord of the Rings films were like the longest films I'd ever seen when they were coming out.
Oh, yeah.
But man, how phenomenally paced were they that they didn't feel that way?
Yeah, that's weird. Never seen that happen.
And it sort of has become the standard now that films are all just like 2.5 hours long. Like non-comedy films are all like 2.5 hours long. And I think Lord of the Rings sort of set the groundwork for that. Like, okay, get ready, because this is it. You're going to be sitting here for a while. You better be... like, and now just everything's that way. I feel like Lord of the Rings really set a lot of standards for our expectations for films. I think it tested us, like you said. It tested your bladder, but it tested our ability to, our attention span. How long are casual people, normal people willing to sit down and watch something that's completely made up, including your kids? How long are your kids going to sit there in the theater and watch all of that happen on screen? And the answer was infinite. We will sit down for an infinite amount of time and watch that shit on screen because it was amazing.
Yeah, it not only tested it tests our attention spans, but our willingness to believe. And you know, it's I think it kind of says something that no one's really tried to test us in the same way since then, or if they have, they haven't been able to measure up. I think actually, and the Infinity War and Endgame are the two films that really even came close in recent memory to reaching that level. But that is about all the time that we have this week. So we hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving, and we will see you guys next time. Sound off in the comments. What is your favorite movie and why? What does it mean to you? Why does it resonate with you? And we will see you guys next time. Thank you as always for tuning in. As always, I'm Dr. Gonzo.
I'm the cat.
Houston, we have a problem.
All right, we'll see you next time. Taka, play us out.